All right, so we're diving into something pretty wild today, the world of AI, and specifically how it's making a huge leap going from those chatbots we hear about all the time to, well, something straight out of sci-fi. Humanoid robots.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're living in the future, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We've got a ton of articles, announcements, all kinds of stuff to dig into today. And trust me, the reality is even wilder than anything you'd imagine.
It really is, and it's moving so fast. It feels like every day there's something new to wrap our heads around.
Exactly. So let's just jump right in. Let's start with the software that's making all of this possible. Because without the software, these robots are, well, just hunks of metal and plastic, right?
Exactly. The brains behind the operation are key.
Okay, so OpenAI, the folks behind ChatGPT, just dropped two major things, Canvas and the real-time API.
And these aren't just like little updates either. These are big deals.
Yeah, from what I've seen, they could completely change how we work with AI.
Totally. Take Canvas, for example. Imagine being a software developer, right? Or even a writer. And you've got this AI that's basically like your partner. It's giving you real-time feedback on your code, your writing, and it actually understands what you're trying to do.
So it's not just like, oh, you made a typo. It's like, hey, I think you could structure this paragraph a bit better to really get your point across.
Exactly. It's like having a superpowered editor or coding buddy who's always there to help you think through problems and be more efficient.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. And then there's the real-time API, which, if I understand it correctly, basically changes the way AI sounds.
Yeah, you can say goodbye to that robotic monotone voice we're all used to hearing from AI.
Thank goodness.
Right. The real-time API allows for much more natural-sounding conversations. Like you can have AI with different voices, accents, the whole 9 yards.
So are we saying that soon we might not even be able to tell if we're talking to a real person or an AI?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a big one. I mean, think about it. This tech could revolutionize things like customer service, language learning, all sorts of things. But it also opens up some, honestly, kind of scary
But
possibilities.
like what happens when AI can manipulate conversations, not just facilitate them, right?
Exactly. It makes you really think about what it means to be human when AI can sound and act so much like us.
It's a whole new world. And it's not just stopping at more natural sounding AI either. It's about AI that can actually do things in the real world. Enter OpenAI's AI agents.
Right, and we're not talking about something way off in the future either. OpenAI is saying these agents are slated to arrive in 2025.
2025, that's like right around the corner.
I know, right? And we're not just talking about AI that can write your to-do list, but AI that actually goes out and does those things for you.
So we're talking like booking flights, ordering groceries, doing our taxes, all that stuff.
Potentially, yes. I mean, they even did a demo of an AI agent ordering strawberries over the phone, and it haggled with the person on the other end about the price.
Hold on, the AI haggled.
Yeah, it was wild. And that's where things get really interesting, but also potentially risky. I mean, imagine the possibilities when AI can interact with the world on our behalf, making decisions, spending money.
That's a lot of power.
Exactly. And it really blurs the lines of who's really in control. OpenAI keeps saying that they're focused on building in safety measures, making sure these AI agents are aligned with human values. But honestly, that feels like a massive challenge.
Because how do you even begin to program human values into an AI? It's not like there's a universal code of ethics.
It's incredibly complex. And it raises all sorts of questions about what happens when AI makes a mistake, or even worse, when it's used for malicious purposes.
Yeah.
These are things we really need to be thinking about right now.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about AI that can write, code, even haggle over prices. But what about AI that can actually walk and talk like us? I mean, that's got to be the ultimate goal, right?
It's definitely the stuff of science fiction, but the lines are getting blurrier every day.
For real.
Yeah.
Because we're not just talking about it anymore. We're talking about companies building and testing actual humanoid robots right now, today.
Yeah, this isn't some distant future. This is happening.
It's mind-blowing. And we're not talking about small startups either, right? These
Yeah.
are some major players.
Oh, yeah, we're talking big names with big money. Tesla, Figure AI, sanctuary AI companies that have the resources and the know-how to really make these sci-fi concepts a reality.
It's crazy. Okay, so let's break down some of these key players because their approaches are fascinating. First up, you've got Tesla's Optimus.
Which, I gotta say, it's a pretty sleek-looking robot.
Right. And it's surprisingly agile. Like, the thing can do yoga.
Yeah, the yoga thing is pretty wild. But what's really interesting about Optimus is that Tesla's using the same AI and data from their self-driving cars, which when you think about it, is a huge advantage.
Because they've already got all that real-world data, right? From millions of Teslas driving around, recognizing objects, navigating environments.
Exactly. And that's incredibly valuable for training a humanoid robot to, not run into things, to interact with the real world.
It's like they're getting a head start. Okay, so then there's figure one, which is taking a bit of a different approach.
Yeah, they're really focused on practicality.
So we're talking like warehouses, logistics, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Maybe even making your morning coffee.
Okay, I could get on board with that.
Right. So it's less about being the most human-like robot and more about being genuinely useful in the environments humans have already created.
Makes sense. And then you've got Sanctuary AI with their Phoenix robot, and they're really pushing the boundaries of what these robots can do, especially when it comes to dexterity.
Yeah, they're really trying to nail those fine motor skills, getting these robots to perform those really human-like movements, making a sandwich, folding laundry, that sort of thing.
Which, from the videos I've seen, is way harder than it sounds.
Oh, absolutely. It's one thing to program a robot to walk or pick up a large object, but to replicate the delicate touch of a human hand, that's a whole other level of complexity.
It's like those videos are both incredible and a little bit humbling.
Totally. Like, we've come so far, but we're still in the early stages.
Well, speaking of problem solving, there's one humanoid robot that's already out there doing it in the real world. Have you heard about One X's Eve?
I have. And it's a fascinating example of how we can integrate these robots into our world right now. It's not bipedal, it's on wheels, but still, this robot can open doors, fetch items, even bake.
It bakes.
It bakes, and it's already being used in some workplaces as an assistant.
Okay, that's pretty amazing. So we've got these big names, Tesla, Figure, Sanctuary, but then you've also got companies like Unitree, which is based in China, coming out with these incredibly agile robots like the H1 and the G1. And what's wild is they're doing it at a fraction of the cost of some of their competitors.
Right, which completely changes the game. Suddenly, these advanced robots aren't just accessible to big corporations or research institutions. They
Right.
can become much more widespread, much more quickly than we thought.
And that brings up a whole other set of questions and challenges, right? But before we get into all of that, I think it's important to remember that this race to create the most advanced humanoid robot, it's not just about the hardware. The software, the learning process, that's all just as important, if not more so.
Absolutely. The physical robot is just the body. The real magic is happening behind the scenes with the software and all the ways these robots are learning.
So talk to me about that. What's going on inside these robots' brains?
Well, it's a combination of things. You've got AI vision, natural language processing, and most importantly, the ability to learn and adapt.
So they're not just pre-programmed to do specific tasks, they can actually learn new things on their own.
In a way, yes. A big part of this is something called embodied learning. It's this idea that robots, like humans, learn best by actually interacting with their environment.
So instead of just being fed information, they're out there experiencing the world, making mistakes, figuring things out.
Exactly. They're using their senses, their movements to learn and adapt. And that's where these incredible simulations come in. Like NVIDIA has this thing called Isaac Sim, which is basically a virtual playground for robots.
A virtual playground, what does that even look like?
So imagine a super realistic video game where these robots can practice all sorts of tasks, from simple things like picking up objects to more complex stuff like navigating a crowded room. And the beauty of it is they can do all this without any risk of damaging themselves or, causing chaos in the real world.
Oh, that's smart. So it's like a dress rehearsal before they're unleashed on the world.
Exactly. They get to practice, make mistakes, learn for those mistakes, all in this safe, controlled environment.
It makes you realize how much we're learning from this process of building these robots. It's like we're not just creating machines, we're trying to understand the very nature of intelligence itself, right?
It really is mind-blowing when you think about it that way. Because at what point does programming become teaching? And at what point does artificial intelligence start to resemble something, well, more than just artificial? These are the big questions, and we're only just starting to explore the answers.
It's a lot to take in, right? All this talk about AI breakthroughs, robots, the future. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of it all.
It's like anything else. We tend to focus on the shiny new possibilities and kind of forget to ask, hey, what could go wrong?
Exactly. And I think it's important to talk about that because there are always two sides to every coin. And recently here in California, we actually saw that play out in a very real way.
You're talking about Governor Newsom's veto of that AI safety bill, SB 1047, right?
That's the one.
Yeah, that was a big deal. And it really got people talking about how we should be regulating this field. especially with how fast it's all moving.
Well, let's back up a bit for people who might not have heard about this. What was in this bill? What kind of safety measures were we even talking about?
Well, the idea was to put some guardrails in place for AI, particularly these really powerful AI models that are being developed. We're talking about things like requiring companies to have a kill switch for their AI.
Wait, a kill switch? Like to shut the whole thing down if it goes rogue?
Exactly. And the bill also called for these really strict testing protocols to make sure the AI was behaving as intended, before it was released into the wild.
Which honestly seems like common sense when you're talking about AI that could potentially have such a huge impact on the world.
Right. And supporters of the bill were really concerned about protecting the public from potential harm. We're talking about the possibility of a large-scale cyber attack caused by AI, or even something like an AI-triggered pandemic.
Okay, those are some pretty scary scenarios, so I'm guessing not everyone was thrilled about this bill.
Yeah, it was a tough one
Yeah.
because you had a lot of people, especially in the tech industry, who felt like the bill was way too broad, that it would stifle innovation, put too many restrictions on companies.
Because the technology is evolving so quickly, right? It's hard to regulate something that's constantly changing.
Exactly. And they argued that it was just too early to be slapping down these kinds of regulations, especially when AI has the potential to do so much good.
So it's that classic dilemma, progress versus safety. How do you encourage the development of something that could revolutionize so many aspects of our lives while also protecting ourselves from the potential risks?
And there's no easy answer. This California bill, it was just the tip of the iceberg. As AI becomes more sophisticated, more integrated into our lives, we're going to have to grapple with even bigger questions.
Like, what happens when AI starts taking over jobs? Or how do we prevent bias from creeping into algorithms that make decisions about our lives?
Exactly. And then there are even bigger, more philosophical questions about what it means to be human in a world where AI can think, learn, even feel, or at least seem to feel emotions.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around, that's for sure. So, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with all of this information, with all of these possibilities and potential pitfalls?
Well, for starters, I think it's about staying informed. Read different perspectives, ask tough questions, and don't be afraid to form your own opinions. Because the future of AI, it's not some predetermined thing. It's going to be shaped by the choices we make today.
So, really, what you're saying is the future is in our hands.
I truly believe it is. And the more we understand about AI, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about how we want to integrate it into our lives.
It's been an incredible journey exploring this topic with you. From the mind-blowing advancements in AI software to the ethical dilemmas of humanoid robots, it's clear we're living in a time of unprecedented technological change. And as we've discussed today, with this change comes great responsibility. So to our listeners, we urge you, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged in the conversation about the future of AI, because it's a conversation that will shape the world we live in.